The golden sun of Ouagadougou hung low over the horizon, casting long shadows across the presidential palace. Today was a day of celebration. President Ibrahim Traoré, known for his iron-willed leadership and surprising rise to power, was hosting a grand banquet for dignitaries, generals, and close allies. It was meant to be a night of laughter, victory speeches, and loyalty reaffirmed. Yet beneath the gilded chandeliers and endless rows of silver platters, a darker current was at play, one that few suspected, and only one soul dared to reveal. The great hall was alive with music, the soft melodies of the kora mingling with the murmur of conversation and clinking glasses. Ibrahim moved among his guests with ease, smiling, laughing, exchanging toasts in crystal goblets. His trusted wife, Amira, stood by his side, radiant and poised. To the outside world, they were the perfect couple, a symbol of unity in a time of uncertain alliances. But in the kitchens, in the corners where the light barely touched, a boy no older than 9 scurried, his eyes wide with fear. His name was Mamadou, an orphan taken in by the palace servants. Most ignored him, treating him as little more than a shadow, invisible, harmless. But it was exactly this invisibility that allowed Mamadou to see and hear things others couldn't. Earlier that day, Mamadou had been delivering linens to the private quarters when he overheard something he wasn't supposed to. 2 men, cloaked in the uniforms of the palace guards, whispering sharply behind a closed door. He had heard the name Ibrahim, spoken with venom, had caught the chilling words, "Tonight, the lion falls." At first, Mamadou thought little of it. The palace was always filled with the dangerous hum of politics. But when he sneaked into the kitchens to steal a leftover pastry, he saw it. A vial of dark liquid being carefully emptied into a steaming tureen, the centerpiece dish reserved for the president himself. Heart-pounding, Mamadou didn't know what to do. No one would listen to a palace urchin. Worse, if he was caught meddling, he might disappear altogether, like the others who had crossed the wrong lines. Yet something in his small heart, some stubborn flicker of courage, pushed him forward. He couldn't let Ibrahim eat that food. He couldn't let him die. As the procession of silver trays made its way to the main hall, Mamadou slipped between the servants, his small frame weaving unnoticed. He found the president just as the covered platter was being placed before him, the aroma of rich spices filling the air. Ibrahim lifted the silver lid with a flourish, smiling broadly at the gathering crowd. Then Mamadou burst from between the tables. "Don't eat it!" he screamed, his voice breaking through the symphony of sound like a dagger. "It's poison. Don't eat." The room froze. For a moment, there was only stunned silence. All eyes turned to the boy, who stood trembling, dirty and ragged, before the most powerful man in the country. The guards moved immediately, rushing forward to seize Mamadou. One grabbed him by the arm, yanking him back, but Ibrahim held up a hand. His sharp eyes, trained from years of battlefield cunning, caught something the others missed. The fear in Mamadou's eyes wasn't the desperate fear of a liar. It was the terror of someone telling a dangerous truth. "Release him," Ibrahim commanded, his voice low but firm. The guards hesitated, then obeyed. Mamadou stumbled forward, falling to his knees. "It's the stew, sir," he gasped. They put something in it. I saw it." Whispers erupted around the room. Some guests stood, unsure whether to flee or demand answers. Amira stepped forward, her face a mask of perfect concern, placing a steadying hand on Ibrahim's arm. "My love," she said soothingly. "He's just a child, frightened. Surely he doesn't know what he speaks." But Ibrahim, ever the soldier, trusted instinct over words. Without another glance at the feast, he turned to his chief of security. Captain Diarra. "Test it," he ordered. Captain Diarra gestured, and a small device was produced, a chemical scanner developed for precisely such threats. They tested the stew within moments. The device flashed red. Gasps rippled through the room. The tension snapped like a taut wire, and suddenly everything was motion. Guests pushing back from the tables, guards sweeping the perimeter, and Ibrahim rising slowly to his feet. His gaze locked not on the food, but on the faces around him. Someone here had tried to kill him, someone trusted, and they had almost succeeded. He turned back to Mamadou, who was still kneeling, wide-eyed and shaking. "You saved my life," Ibrahim said, loud enough for all to hear. The boy looked up at him, unsure if he was about to be thanked or executed. Ibrahim extended his hand, lifting Mamadou to his feet. "From this day," he declared, "you are under my protection." The hall rang with applause, though the sound was hollow, strained. Too many faces were pale, too many glances flickered with hidden fear. But Ibrahim wasn't finished. His mind raced, connecting threads. Who had access to the kitchens? Who knew which dish he would choose? And why had Amira, his beloved wife, tried so hard to dismiss the boy's warning? He looked at her now, her hand still lightly resting on his sleeve, her smile serene, her eyes just a little too calm. A seed of doubt took root in Ibrahim's mind. Tonight's betrayal was deeper than a simple assassination plot. It was personal, and the real danger had just begun. The celebration had collapsed into a tense, uneasy gathering. No one dared to leave the hall without Ibrahim's permission. The president's usually warm demeanor was gone, replaced by the calculating stare of a man who knew enemies lurked within arm's reach. Mamadou stood by his side now, a small shadow barely reaching Ibrahim's waist. The boy's presence was a reminder, a silent accusation against everyone who had sat comfortably while death crept toward the president's plate. Captain Diarra, grim-faced, began interrogating the kitchen staff one by one. Servants, chefs, and waiters were lined up against the walls, trembling as questions rained down on them. No one admitted to seeing anything. No one remembered Ed who had handled the dish last. Ibrahim kept his gaze moving through the crowd. There were too many possible suspects. Generals he had humiliated, ministers whose power he had curbed, foreign dignitaries who saw him as a thorn in their side. But in his gut, Ibrahim knew this was not a grand political maneuver orchestrated from afar. No, this betrayal was more intimate, more dangerous. Amira hovered nearby, offering comforting words to guests, projecting calm. Her voice was soft, her gesture delicate, but Ibrahim noticed small details now. The stiffness in her posture, the careful distance she maintained from the poisoned dish, the way her eyes flickered to certain individuals across the room. Silent glances he would have missed before. He motioned for Diarra to come closer. "Find out who assigned kitchen duty tonight," Ibrahim murmured under his breath. "And find out who had access to the private wine cellar." Diarra nodded and slipped away without a word. Meanwhile, Mamadou tugged lightly at Ibrahim's jacket. "Sir," he whispered, "there is more." Ibrahim crouched to the boy's level, his voice low. "Tell me." Mamadou's hands twisted nervously in his ragged shirt. "Before I saw them poison the food, I heard them talking. They said you wouldn't make it to sunrise." Ibrahim's eyes narrowed. It wasn't just one assassination attempt. Tonight's feast was a distribute action. Whoever had planned this intended to finish the job before dawn, one way or another. The president rose slowly, scanning the room again. His enemies were counting on panic, confusion, If he left now, he might walk straight into another trap. If he stayed, the knife might come from someone already inside. A plan formed in his mind. Swift, brutal, calculated, the kind of move that had once made him a feared commander in the battlefield's chaos. "Ladies and gentlemen," Ibrahim said, his voice cutting through the murmurs like a blade. "Tonight, we have uncovered a grave threat to our beloved nation. I ask you all to remain calm and stay within the palace while we ensure your safety." Some faces showed relief. Others paled. The doors were locked. Guardias posted. No one would leave until Ibrahim said so. Moments later, Dyer returned, his face tight with urgency. "Sir," he said quietly, "the kitchen shift supervisor is missing, and 2 guardias from the wine cellar detail are unaccounted for." Ibrahim's jaw tightened. It confirmed his suspicion. The poison had been only step 1. The real attack was yet to come. He turned back to Mamadou. "Can you show me where you hear the men talking?" The boy nodded. Without fanfare, Ibrahim and a handful of his most trusted guardias slipped from the banquet hall, Mamadou leading the way through the labyrinthine corridors of the palace. They moved quickly, shadows within shadows, through winding halls, past storerooms and servants' quarters, until Mamadou stopped before a small, disused maintenance room. "It was there," the boy whispered, pointing. Ibrahim nodded to Dyer, who signaled 2 guardias to sweep the room. They entered cautiously, guns drawn. Moments later, they called out. Inside, the room was empty, but the evidence was clear. Maps of the palace spread across a table. A crate of explosives tucked into a corner. Radio equipment still humming with faint static. Ibrahim's blood ran cold. This wasn't just an assassination attempt, it was a coup. The explosives were likely rigged to critical points. Supper T-beams, entry gates, power systems. The plan was simple and devastating. Kill Ibrahim, sow chaos, cripple the palace defenses, and allow conspirators to seize power before anyone could react. "How long do we have?" Ibrahim demanded. One of the guardias examined the detonator attached to the crate. "Minutes, maybe less." "Disarm it," Ibrahim barked addition. The guardi set to work, but Ibrahim didn't wait. He turned back to Mamadou. "Did you see anyone else? Hear any names?" Mamadou thought hard, his brow furrowing. "The Y called one of them Colonel, and they said she would make the signal." Ibrahim's chest tightened. There was only one she powerful enough to orchestrate an attack like this from inside the palace. Someone who had access to the kitchens, the guardias, the schedules. Amir A. He forced himself to breathe steadily. If he acted too soon, he could cause a panic, tipping her hand. If he acted too late, "Sir," Dyer called out. "The bomb is disabled." Ibrahim nodded. One threat neutralized. But the bigger serpent was still coiled around his throne. He straightened and motioned for his team to move out. "We return to the hall," he said. "No one is to suspect what we know. Not yet." As they retraced their steps, Ibrahim's mind raced. He would need to outplay Amira at her own game. Expose her, trap her, without giving her the chance to strike first. When they entered the banquet hall again, the atmosphere had soured even further. Guests huddled in clusters, speaking in low, frantic voices. Fear hung heavy in the air. Amira stood near the dais, her eyes immediately finding Ibrahim's. Her smile was perfect, warm, inviting. But now he saw the calculation behind it. "My love," she said, moving toward him with graceful steps. "Is everything safe?" He met her gaze, matching her facade. "For now," he said smoothly. "But it seems there are still dangers lurking in the shadows." Her smile didn't waver. "Then let us enjoy why the rest of the evening," she said softly, taking his hand. He allowed it, feeling the delicate pressure of her fingers around his. A serpent's kiss. Ibrahim knew the final confrontation was coming. He just had to choose the right moment to strike first. And when he did, there would be no mercy. The hall seemed to pulse with tension. Each heartbeat a drum of suspicion in Ibrahim's ears. He held Amir's hand loosely as he guided her back toward the head table. Every step was a battle to conceal the fire raging inside him. He had once trusted this woman with his life, his dreams, even the future of their nation. Now he had to treat her like a coiled viper, dangerous and desperate. As they returned to their seats, Ibrahim signaled subtly to Captain Traoré. The trusted officer understood immediately, disappearing into the crowd like a shadow. The guests, sensing something was amiss, fell into a hushed silence. It was as if the entire room held its breath, waiting for the storm they couldn't name but knew was coming. Ibrahim raised his glass, the motion slow and deliberate. "My friends," he began, his voice smooth but cutting beneath the surface. "Tonight was to be a celebration, but fate has revealed a hidden enemy in our midst. An enemy who, under the guise of loyalty, sought to bring destruction upon us all." Murmurs ran through the room like a ripple across still water. Amira smiled at him, her expression carefully composed. "Let us not accuse without proof, my dear," she said sweetly, her voice carrying to the edges of the hall. "We must not allow fear to cloud our judgment." He turned to her, lifting an eyebrow. "Wise words, Amir. We must not accuse without proof." At that moment Traoré returned, holding a small black velvet pouch. He handed it to Ibrahim without a word. Ibrahim loosened the string and emptied the contents into his hand. A small, gleaming communications device, identical to the type used only by higher-ranking military officers, and stained gloves with traces of the same poison found in the stew. Ibrahim turned to the crowd. "This," he said coldly, holding the items aloft, "was found hidden inside the private wardrobe of someone who had unrestricted access to every corridor, every meeting, every meal." He let the silence stretch, the weight of accusation heavy in the air. "And who might that be?" Amira asked, her voice still soft but trembling at the edges now. "You," Ibrahim said simply. The room exploded into chaos. Gasps, cries of disbelief, chairs scraping against marble as people recoiled. Gowar DS immediately stepped forward, surrounding the president and his wife. Amir's mask cracked for a fraction of a second, fear, then fury, flashing in her dark eyes. "You have no proof," she snapped, her sweetness evaporating into venom. "Anyone could have planted those things." "True," Ibrahim said calmly. "Anyone could have. But only one person had motive, opportunity, and knowledge of every move I would make tonight. Only one person dismissed the warning of an innocent boy in front of dozens of witnesses. Only one person stood to gain everything from my death." Amira straightened, her poise returning in a heartbeat. She lifted her chin defiantly. "I did it for the country. Why?" she said, her voice steady and chilling. "You have become a tyrant. You rule with fear. You crush dissent. You silence those who stand against you. You think the people love you, but they are afraid. I would have saved them." Ibrahim studied her. This woman he had loved, who had once sworn loyalty not just to him, but to the future they dreamed of together. "Perhaps," he said quietly, "you convinced yourself of that. Perhaps you believed the lie you told yourself." He stepped closer, his voice dropping so that only she could hear. But in the end, you chose betrayal over courage, deceit over truth. Amira didn't flinch. She looked at him squarely in the eye, unrepentant. You won't kill me, she said. You don't have the stomach to murder your own wife in front of the nation. Ibrahim smiled, not with warmth, but with finality. No, he said, but I will see you judged. He turned to Traoré. Take her away. She will stand trial for treason. Traoré stepped forward, snapping handcuffs around Amira's wrists. She offered no resistance as she was led through the sea of stunned guests. Her head remained high, her dignity a crumbling facade she refused to abandon. As she disappeared from sight, Ibrahim turned back to the crowd. You have witnessed tonight not only betrayal, he said, his voice strong and clear, but survival. We will not be ruled by fear. We will not let darkness snuff out the light we have built together. There was a beat of silence. Then slowly, hesitantly, applause began. It grew, rising like a tide, as the guests, politicians, generales, foreign dignitaries, rallied around the man who had faced death and endured. Ibrahim felt none of the triumph they cheered, only a deep, hollow ache. Later, when the hall had emptied and the palace had quieted, Ibrahim sat alone in the small, private garden behind the royal chambers. The moon hung heavy above, casting a silver light across the still water of the fountain. Mamadou approached cautiously, still barefoot and hesitant. Ibrahim looked up and beckoned him forward. You have more courage than most men I know, he said. Mamadou blushed, staring at the ground. You saved my life, Mamadou. And tonight you saved the future of this country. Why? The boy shifted nervously. I just did what was right. Ibrahim smiled. A real smile this time, touched with both gratitude and sorrow. That's what makes a true hero, he said. He rose, placing a firm hand on Mamadou's thin shoulder. You will not be a servant here any longer. From today you will be my ward. You will have tutors, training, and anything else you need. Samida, why you will help lead this nation. Mamadou's eyes widened in shock, and for a long moment he was too stunned to speak. Then he whispered, Thank you, sir. No, Ibrahim said, looking out across the garden, his voice heavy with the weight of all that had transpired. Thank you. The night breeze stirred the leaves, carrying away the last whispers of betrayal. The palace would heal, the nation would endure, and Ibrahim Traoré, scarred but unbroken, would lead it. Not because he was invincible, but because, even in the deepest darkness, he had listened to the cry of a single courageous child. The future was uncertain, but it was still his to shape. And this time he would trust his instincts above all else.